So welcome back to Chapter 10, Leading the Project Team. This is part 2, and we're going to discuss leadership styles. Now, the text that we're following, okay, lists these 6 leadership styles: coercive, authoritative, affiliative, democratic, pace setting, and coaching as styles. Now, there are many, many leadership styles, okay? Now, in order to decide, and remember, no one leadership style is going to be right for every project. It depends on the team. Sometimes we have a team that we need to be more authoritative with. Sometimes we need to be coercive. Sometimes we need to coach. And sometimes we need to implement some of these attributes of each of these styles in dealing with individual people on the team. Again, going back to what motivates them. If somebody is not motivated, by having a boss that's authoritative, but likes to be coached, then we need to coach that person. Okay? So notice the 2012 Society of Human Resource Management on the right, Employee Job Satisfaction and Engagement Report. This is what they found were the top 5 things that motivated employees. So the first is opportunities to use skills and abilities. So what this means is we have to figure out what an employee or what a person on our team's skills and abilities are and allow them to leverage those to create job satisfaction and to become leaders themselves. Job security, of course, is important to people. They want to know they're going to have a job tomorrow. But notice then, finally, number 3, we get to compensation and pay. Finally, 4, communication between employees and senior management and relationship with immediate supervisors. Now, if you're familiar with the Hawthorne studies, and I mentioned this before, communication between employees and senior management, okay, or somebody that seems senior. The Hawthorne studies went into a manufacturing plant and just messed with everything in the plant. They messed with timing of the employees. They messed with the lighting. They messed with the temperature. They were trying to see how to create manufactured products faster along an assembly line. The interesting thing was every time they made a change, productivity went up. They reduced the lights, productivity went up. They increased the lighting, productivity went up. They reduced the temperature, productivity went up. They increased the temperature, productivity went up. They didn't understand it. To what they realized was they had people monitoring the people that were doing the work and communicating with those people, finding out how these changes affected them. And the fact is the changes didn't affect them. What affected them positively was here were people that were going in Monday through Saturday doing a job for 8 to 10 hours. Nobody cared. They sat there and now somebody cared. Somebody was trying to figure out what it was that would make it better for them. Thus, they were being interacted with, they were focused on as how they did their job, and that's what made the difference. And then, of course, relationship with immediate supervisors. If you've ever had a supervisor, maybe you had a great job, but your supervisor was just a pain in the interior. You didn't get along with them. They didn't get along with you. They didn't seem to respect you. They didn't communicate with you. Whatever it was, it made you not want to go to work. And so what does this mean? Well, a supervisor is a leader. Granted, more of a manager than a leader. But if we lead and then we're aspiring at the people that we're supervising, we're going to create a better work organization. Okay? So anyway, the study, of 3,871 executives worldwide, Daniel Goleman in 2000, suggests that best leaders do not rely only on one leadership style, and that was the point that I was trying to make to you today. Sometimes it means many leadership styles, and actually, I'm going to add my favorite leadership style and briefly bring that into play. Now, I would encourage you to pause each one and read these. I'm not going to go through these, but basically, the coercive style is do as I say. And, we add to that, right? Do as I say, not what I do. Can be effective in crisis situation, kickstart a turnaround situation, dealing with problem employee. A turnaround situation, by the way, is maybe bringing in a new leader who needs to be authoritative, who needs to get things done to turn a company around so that the company doesn't fail, so that people don't lose their jobs. And that's a tough process. If we bring in a turnaround person, that person tends to be the leader for the turnaround and not the sustainable organization. Okay, unless that leader can change their style. But a lot of times that leader who is using the coercive style doesn't last long. Okay, they're not going to create fans. It provides a great deal of control over an organization. It demands conformance. Cons, very negative on the work environment. So you can see why we can only do this for a short time. We can turn a company around, but this tends to not be the person who's going to lead the company for 5 to 10 years after the turnaround. The authoritative style, so this is the come with me. The leader outlines a clearly defined goal, but empowers people to choose their own means of achieving it. So if we need to get from point A to point C, we don't necessarily need to go through B. We can go through A.1, A.5, not even hitting C or B plus 1, whatever the case may be. But the thing is, notice what we're doing here. We're empowering the person to choose how they do it. We just need them to know exactly where we need to be and when we need to be there. And then their job is to show up with whatever we needed them to do on that day, ready to go. We don't care how they do it. Frankly, for some people, procrastination works. They create better products when they procrastinate, when they give themselves a little time. Now, I don't recommend it, especially watching students procrastinate, where they have a week to do the work and they wait till Sunday when it's due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. and they don't give themselves enough time. And I watch great students turn in lousy work. But understand, that's the thing. At a certain point, it is up to you to be your own leader and to lead yourself. Authoritative style works best when the organization or project is adrift. So again, we're bringing it back. We need to be more authoritative. We give the opportunity for people to do the work, but we really lay down good boundaries of when the work needs to be done and sometimes how. Not a good style for inexperienced leaders, who work with experts or more experienced teams, because of course experts don't tend to need to be led. Okay. So you can see how some of these styles, by the way, apply to certain industries. But remember that some of these authoritative styles don't need to be at McDonald's. People can still be inspired and led from behind to do a great work, to produce a great burger, to give great service when they have the opportunity to give great service the way they want to give great service. So in the affiliative style, people come first. Leaders try to build strong emotional bonds that translate into strong loyalty by attempting to keep people happy and creating harmony among them. Now, this can be really challenging to do. And also, my experience with this leadership style is there is a huge balance between doing this and still setting boundaries. Because when I try to create harmony, people tended to extend those boundaries. Meaning, show up for work at 8:05, at 8:10, when they were supposed to be ready to work at 8 a.m., and challenging them on that reduces that harmony. This works well in situations where the leader must build team harmony, morale, trust. This works well for high-end technical people that you're leading. Does not work well for people that need some structure or direction. So again, remember, and it's worthwhile saying again, one person on the team may need one leadership style from you while another person needs another. The democratic style, what do you think, or what do we think? What is it the project team wants to do? People have a greater say in the decisions that affect their work. Morale tends to be higher. Why? Because they're making decisions for themselves. More realistic idea of what can and cannot be done. And remember, we can still set boundaries. We can give them the opportunity to lead, to make decisions within healthy guidelines for the project team or, for the job function that they're doing. Works best when the leader needs buy-in, consensus, or to gain valuable input from others. You see the pros and cons there. Again, you should be pausing and reading all of the slide. I'm just hitting on the keys. The pace setting style, do as I do now. So leader sets high performance standards and has an obsession for doing things better and faster, more powerful, dun, 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 bionic man, you get the idea. Poor performers are quickly identified and replaced. Notice what it says there. Poor performers aren't kept and managed on a affirmative or authoritative style or a coercive style. They're let go. If we're dealing with time, and again, this tends to be the leadership style for projects. We know when we need to get there and how we need to get there. We know we need to create something that's better, faster, stronger, cheaper, whatever the case may be. People may lose energy and enthusiasm if work becomes task-focused, routine, and boring. So keep that in mind. Just because we're setting a pace doesn't mean we need to set a pace that is the same thing every day over and over again. I could not work in manufacturing as someone in the manufacturing process. I've worked in leadership in manufacturing, and that works for me. But doing the same thing over and over again each day, that would drive me nuts. But let's be clear. There are people that's what they want to do. They want to come in and do the same thing. I have an acquaintance that has worked as an X-ray technician for years, has no desire to be in management, has no desire to lead, but is absolutely great at what they do each and every day, and they're paid well because of it. So keep in mind, just because you want to be a leader doesn't mean everyone wants to be a leader as well. Okay? And we need those people who want to do the same things over and over again. And they do it because it gives them the freedom after work to let go. Managers tend to always be thinking, how can I make things better? When I was in management as an IT director, my brain never stopped as to how I could make the company better, more efficient, working on problems, working on projects, etc. May be appropriate in situations that require quick results for a highly motivated, self-directed, and content team. Again, professionals that are already motivated, who have demonstrated that they're motivated, don't need you to motivate them. They just need you to set them on a direction and get out of the way. So, coaching style is a try this. Now, again, I like the fact that there's always an opportunity to coach. No matter how great the employee or how bad the employee, there's always an opportunity to coach. And coaching is very different than these other leadership styles. Helps people identify their unique strengths and weaknesses, how they can work on them to improve themselves, thus improving their performance at work. Leader is good at designating and giving people challenging but attainable assignments. So it's the idea that it's a little bit out of your grasp, but if you just walk 2 steps forward, you can grab it. Okay? That's the difference. Shorter, minor failures are acceptable. Again, when we're coaching, we need to allow people to fail. We need to encourage people to fail and fail often. If we have somebody who's not willing to fail, what that means is they're not willing to try. Because they're not going to try if there's a risk of failure. So we want them to try and try again and try again and prototype again and do things again. Realize that Edison had over 2,000 failed attempts at creating the light bulb. Where would we be if he hadn't self-motivated and coached himself to try it again, to look at the problem and find a different solution? So this style may be least often used, but can be a valuable, powerful tool, again, improving the performance of others. So if we find an employee that's not doing well, we can always go into the coaching style. Now, before we go on, and we're going to pause after this point, but I want to bring this over. I want to introduce you to a leadership style that I like called servant leadership. Okay, so if you just Google servant leadership, as I have, you're going to see it's a leadership philosophy in which the main goal of the leader is to serve. This is different from traditional leadership, the authoritative, the head, I'm the leader, do what I want, get on the bus, go with me. Okay, where leaders' main focus is the thriving of their company or organizations, or their thriving of the team. Thus, we figure out how to serve others. And I think my example that I gave you with Dick Went is a great example of servant leadership. He was serving someone who was cutting wood. Their wood bin was getting filled. They would have had to go empty it, but he emptied it so that they could continue to work. Okay, now that may seem basic to you, but understand, servant leadership means that we are serving others for the greater good or for the completion of the project. We're giving them what they need, and maybe this is, what, folks, we're coming up on a deadline. We need to work through lunch. You know what? The project manager goes out, grabs some pizzas, grabs some drinks that people like, takes into consideration if somebody, doesn't do gluten and gets something that's gluten-free for them. They're serving others. And of course, in life, we want to serve others before we serve ourselves, in my opinion. Okay? So I'll see you in the next part. We'll talk about getting deeper into things like emotional intelligence and how that plays into being a leader and being a member of a project team. Take care.